Hey, have you ever wondered why certain patterns happen in your life? Something that keeps happening, and it can be quite frustrating. It's like, why does this always happen to me? Give me a few minutes and we'll talk about why things repeat, why life repeats itself. I'm Joseph Onesta. I'm a clinical hypnotist in the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I work with clients here in my office and around the world online. And so, if you like or enjoy or are helped by this video, please like and subscribe, and all of those things that you're supposed to do to help get the word out. All right. And if you don't like it, I'm sure some people will complain, but then you know not to come back. Anyway, so these patterns in your life are really learned processes. And you might look at the world and say, well, there are lots of things that I can't control, and these things keep happening to me. Well, that's true. There are things in the world that happen that you can't control. In fact, most of life um, you can't control. The big difference is whether or not to those processes or those things that happen to you, whether you react and thus often make it worse, or you respond and make it better. And most of us, reaction is natural, response is learned. So there is this function. Your whole life exists as a communication system between your brain and your body. And in your brain, of course, we have conscious thoughts and we have unconscious processes like your heartbeat. And so this interaction between your brain and your body is learned over time. You started when you were perhaps even in the womb, and then as you learned about life and experienced life, Michael Pollan calls it lantern consciousness. I don't know if he made that up, but it's like this sort of 360 degree taking in everything that you're experiencing as a child. And then later, we sort of focus, we sort of pay attention to certain things, and that focus then becomes what we consider our reality. And often, without being a little weird, we ignore everything else. So these patterns in life, and they repeat again and again and again, no matter what it is that you experience, that the way you handle what the world offers you. Oh, I'm addicted to donuts, or even chronic pain in some cases is actually a kind of learned response. Say you injure your knee, for example, and it takes a long time to heal. Well, in that length of time to heal, there's this constant communication between the nerves and the processes in your knee with your brain. Now, the knee heals, okay, but for you to understand, believe it or not, for you to understand that it's your knee that hurts, those signals have to go, the damage signals need to go to your brain, and then your brain sends them back to the knee, interprets it, and puts it back in the knee. So as that knee heals, for example, as that knee heals, if that takes a very long time, both of those pathways can become sort of fossilized. So the knee heals, there's no more signal coming from the knee to the brain, but the brain has learned a signal from the brain to the knee. And so, in your perception, and I'm not saying it's not real, it's real to you because you feel it, but part of your perception, and I'm oversimplifying a little bit here, but part of it's your perception that your knee still hurts. And we see this in some examples where people have had amputations, okay, and they'll tell you that the amputated part is itchy or painful or something like that. And this amazing experiment with this sort of mirror box where someone's lost a hand, you can put they can put their hand into one side, and because there's a mirror there, they see two hands, and you could scratch and it feels good. But that's just tricking your brain, right? Okay, but that brain is amazing. And this brain body mechanism, and often with my clients, I talk about a brain body mechanism, and the mechanism is functioning. It's a machine that's working. And you're really not conscious of it at all until you become conscious of it. So if there are these patterns in your life that keep repeating, and just as a little side example, many years ago, I was the director of education for a nonprofit called Consumer Credit Counseling Service in Los Angeles. And I got involved with this program called Get Checking. I don't know if it still exists, but it was all about how people from one bank to another, they keep this string of bouncing checks. And there's this kind of like credit report system for checking accounts called check systems. And now no banks will give them a checking account because they keep bouncing checks. And very often these people, and it's not intentional. Some people are intentional, but not really. Not those aren't the people coming to see me. Anyway, so they want to get a checking account. They're frustrated they can't have a checking account. And so, and money has changed a little bit since then, but they would come to the class and they would say, the bank keeps bouncing my checks. Well, there's a reason why the bank keeps bouncing your checks. If you're going from bank to bank in your checks, remember when we used to write checks, if the bank is bouncing your checks, there's a reason for it. And that reason is your understanding, your response, your automatic behaviors, the way you function, and you have to learn. And so in this program, we would teach people, we would interrupt, of course, they don't have a checking account. We would interrupt that process. They would learn how to behave because they interrupt the process is they didn't have a checking account. They would learn how to behave, and then a bank would give them a second chance, or actually usually a fourth or fifth chance, and take a chance on them with the savings account to back it up, a little security there. So this system is parallel. This whole thing works the way hypnosis works. A lot of people think that they come to me as a hypnotist and they think I'm going to knock them out. I'm going to change the programming in their brain, snap my fingers, and everything is different. It doesn't actually work that way. Sorry. If it did, I would have them lined up, and we would put ourselves out of business because we could fix, quote unquote, fix everybody. But I can't fix anybody. I don't fix people. I help them change. And so when we have these brain body pathways that are fossilized, meaning that they are habitual and automatic, so habitual that they are absolutely automatic, what we want to do is find a place in that process for us to interrupt that process, to interrupt it, to stop it in its tracks. And then it becomes a matter of decision. Do you continue in the old pattern, or do you create a new one? And so what we as hypnotists do is we give the brain more information so that your unconscious mind, that automatic part of you, can make a different decision. And I say can. It doesn't always, but it can, and keep going, and it will. So what happens is we interrupt the process. Usually when at a point when you realize you're on that downward slope, that slippery slope. You've stepped onto it, and you know you're going to, or even better, a little before it. It's like, if I take one more, I know. And in fact, when I was in college, I want you to know I didn't drink. I don't. I'm not. I don't really care for it. But when I was in college, there was this point where I knew, because kids drink because they think it's cool. There was what I knew, that if I had even one more drink, I'd be on my ass. And how many times, not many because I didn't really like the drinking part, but how many times did I end up on my ass? Because I chose for one more. It also happens with cigarettes. It happens with a whole bunch of things. Donuts. Oh, yes, it happens with donuts. So, the thing is in hypnosis, what we want to do is interrupt that process and then learn a different one, because you learned the first one. Oh, I need a donut. Do you? Well, practically nobody needs a donut, right? So, I mean, donuts are delicious, can be. Some of them aren't. But nobody actually needs one. No. Anyway, so we interrupt the process and we learn something new. So, for example, with something like chronic pain, or let's use the example of those hands. Intellectually, you know that one of them has been amputated and that it can't really hurt. Intellectually, you know that. Unconsciously, because there is this brain body functioning, your unconscious mind is searching for that hand. And so, where is it? Well, you learn a new way. You learn a new way of thinking, a new way of responding. And I will emphasize, there is a very real difference between reacting and responding. And I'm making this video because I'm moving from a transition I do these little sort of short educational things for people with metabolic disease. So, and diabetes, obesity, that sort of thing. So, what we want to talk about is how just the simple, and in that short, I will, in just the simple act of opening a refrigerator can cause your brain body to react in a way that says you expect to eat. So let's say you have a bowl of grapes in the refrigerator, and you open the refrigerator basically to see what's in there. And every time you do, you take a grape or two. You're actually training your body. When the refrigerator opens, I'm going to eat. So let's say later you open the refrigerator. This is basic behaviorism. There was this guy Pavlov with dogs and salivation. If you don't know about it, go look up Pavlov's dogs, Pavlov, and learn about it. This is simple behaviorism on the most basic level. You open the refrigerator and your brain thinks you're going to eat, and it starts telling the organs in your body, we're going to eat. And if you're always reaching for grapes, right, something sweet, sugary, then it responds in a certain way, whether you take the grapes or not. And so with this system, like, why do I always bounce checks? Why is it so hard for me? I mean, it can actually be, why is it so hard for me to lose weight? Because you keep opening the refrigerator because you've trained. So one of the things that we do in metabolic disease is we look at the eating event and we train our body in a different way how to do that or when to do that. It's not really how, it's when. So if I take certain steps, and I have a whole series of those shorts on, I call it intentional eating. Some other people call it mindful eating, but I find that most explanations of mindful eating are, it's not something even someone who does this for a living wants to do. So, anyway, I make it simple for you. It's called intentional eating, and you can look it up, or I don't know, contact me and I'll send you a link, I guess. But so, intentional eating, there are certain qualities so that what we are actually doing is training our brain body mechanism to not do those things until X happens. And X happens intentionally. So we're just learning something new. And in hypnosis, whether it's, let's think about it. Anxiety is a response. Uh, it's not a medical deficiency, or at least not notably a medical deficiency. It's a response. A person could live your parallel life and not have that response. It's a response. Not a response. It's a reaction. Even me, I'm getting confused. It's a reaction. Smoking is a reaction. Our brain, something told our brain, something in our brain said it's time to smoke, we smoke. Well, lots of people go through life exactly the same situations and their brain never tells them to smoke. My brain never tells me to take a shot of whiskey. It never does. I don't need it. I don't want it. I don't like it. And you could say, well, it's because you don't like it. Well, when I was a kid, getting a little sauced with my friends, that was kind of fun. But I knew that at that certain point, that if I took another one, I'd be on my ass. So that's really when we're working in hypnosis, that's what we're looking for. That moment where it becomes a decision. And then we decide I'm not having another one. And we're teaching our body something else. And we're using that innate awareness to benefit from it. I had a client who, she was young, and she was diagnosed with, it wasn't a formal diagnosis because she was so young, but they imagined or they thought she met the criteria for a thing called borderline personality disorder. And this is a person who has reactions that diverge from what other people had learned to either control or suppress or whatever. So she was doing certain things. And one of the things that would happen is that she would, inexplicably to the people around her, not understanding what's going on with her, inexplicably, she would react, perhaps not physically violently, but verbally violent or emotionally violent, just this very strong reaction. And I asked her, I said, well, do you know when this is going to happen? Notice my phrasing. And she said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, what is it? She said, my hands get warm. Well, I don't know why her hands get warm. Right. And but I said, okay, well, we're going to consider that the 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 moment when you have the choice to either blow up and get it off your chest, or to turn around and walk away and process it alone so that you're not hurting other people. She didn't want to hurt anybody. She just didn't have control. And so, no, I can't treat. Hypnotists do not treat anything, right? I'm helping her deal with this experience, these things that happen in her life. That's what hypnotists do. So I said, let's make a word. You and your family, you make a word. When you feel your hands get warm, then you say that word, whatever it is. It could be crazy. It doesn't matter. Ippity bippity. It makes no difference. Abracadabra, whatever. Whatever that word is, it becomes like code for my hands are getting warm. I'm going to go chill out until this passes. Right? Get it? And so we went through the process and this is all done after we're done working together, right? It has to continue forever. It has to become a new pattern. When she feels like she's going to blow up, she says that word to her family and disappears. Now, if the people she's around aren't intimate with her and enough to know that word and to understand that she's dealing with a condition, another example. And this sounds, if you've ever been around someone who's severely autistic, they'll often have a reaction like stimming, sometimes playing with their fingers or shaking or something. It's called stimming. And what that says to the person observing them is that they are overwhelmed. Something is, they don't like it, and it's overwhelming. So, the higher functioning they are, they can actually learn to respond in a different way than react. But stimming is a reaction, and it's not something they normally can control. So it's the same sort of thing. And because we're human, we want to help each other, most of us anyway. So in your life, those patterns that keep repeating, whether it's something, I mean, I don't think anybody bounces checks. I don't know how many people actually write checks anymore, but whether it's something like, why do I always spend all my money before the end of the month? Why am I always buying things that I don't need? Or what? Those were from my old consumer credit days, right? Or, why do I take that next drink? Or why do I always blame other people? Or why do I always blame myself? That's a big one. Why am I afraid to go out of the house? Why am I afraid to drive? Another big one, particularly in certain like highways or something. Why do I not like to fly? Why is it every time that this idea comes up, I get sick? Every time this event, every time this happens, I come down with a cold. Well, it's that brain-body connection, and it's automatic. Understand, it's not your fault. You didn't know you were creating anything. You didn't know that this is what was happening to you. You were just trying to figure out and develop strategies for dealing with something when it happens. That's all. And it becomes a kind of learning thing. So if you're always opening the refrigerator, for example, and you have trouble losing weight, there could be something there. And a technique called intentional eating, some people call it mindful, but like I said, every time, oh, I'm feeling the weight of the food on the fork, and as it comes to my lips, this is kind of really boring. That's mindful eating, right? Um, but intentional eating means that I basically eat in a certain way. And when I eat, this is always the way it is. Oversimplified. And we learn a new pattern. And then that way, our body will adjust over time. Our brain body mechanism will learn the new strategy. This is what hypnosis is all. Hypnosis makes it a little easier because, like right now, I'm talking at you. You're not even talking with me, but you're judging me. You're judging everything I say. Either it's useful, interesting, or bullshit. And if it's bullshit, if you decide that what I'm saying is bullshit, it's not getting anywhere near your unconscious mind. You're filtering it out. So in a session, if you give yourself to the process, you stop that filtration, and based on, what we've talked about, we start planning or planting and planning. You can't plant without a plan. Planting and planning for interrupting the process and changing your response. The reaction can remain for a long time. It's been 25 years since I've had a cigarette. I no longer think about having a cigarette. But for a long time, I did. But I changed my response. My response wasn't, I need a cigarette, I'm going to go get them. My response became, oh, yeah, I don't do that anymore. Just like that. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't do that anymore. I'm done. So, a little bit about hypnosis, but I want you to understand that much of what you react to or your reactions are learned behaviors. They are learned processes, and they may have been valid at one point. That may have been the best way that you could come up with at the time, and now it's time to learn better ways. So, if you came to me from the intentional eating videos, now you understand a little bit more. But if you found this and you're interested in what's going on, stay tuned.